And fire it up. Okay, good. Folks, welcome to today's session. Again, this is the mentor orientation for the PED Summer Internship Program. My name is Mike May. I work with Future Focused Education out of Albuquerque, and I do work-based learning placements in the Albuquerque area and Santa Fe. We work with a lot of different schools and businesses, as well as in Cuba, Las Cruces, and Taos. So I'm excited to be with you today and have you here. We have a great team of folks pulled together. Jose Villarreal and I are going to be taking the lead in the presentation today. Rebecca Cisneros will be joining us, and then we're supported by a team of folks from PED who are working behind the scenes, making the Zoom magic happen. So Christian Naranjo is with us, Jaime Hernandez, Denise Ojeda. So we have all conspired to create this training for you today. And each of those individuals, as they come up online in Zoom, they will introduce themselves and share a little bit about where they're coming from and the work that they do. Again, this is wonderful to see. We now have over 120 people, it looks like, on this call, which is absolutely awesome. Rebecca and Jose and I quickly conferred and decided we would not do the individual introductions at the start of this, because then we would finish at 9 o'clock tonight. So we're going to jump into things, and I just want to affirm that if you are not a mentor, perhaps you are an intern coordinator, perhaps you are with the county in your area that's helping put this on, or the Pueblo, or a tribal entity, you are more than welcome to attend and participate in this facilitation today. We are going to approach things through the lens of as if you were a mentor. And if this is also a second time for you, you are more than welcome to be here. We're happy to have you. You will hear some things and see things that perhaps you have already seen before, but that's always good for reinforcement. So we're going to get going. At this point, I am going to share my screen again, and I'm going to hand things off to Rebecca Cisneros. She'll introduce herself and start us off for the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. I am Rebecca Cisneros. I am the Youth Engagement Coordinator for the Department of Workforce Solutions. I have the opportunity to work with young people and to work with community leaders and community supporters to create realistic career pathways for young people, tools and resources to help them achieve their goals. We thank you so much for being here. We are working in partnership with the Public Education Department to provide work-based learning opportunities for the young people across New Mexico. So as you know, these are federal funds that are being given to us so that we can help high school age students enter into the workforce. Some of these young people are going to be first-time workers. Some of them have never had a job before. They've never been into an office like yours, so keep that in mind. We also have some young people that have had a job. So this is their opportunity to enhance their employability skills. Let's see, what else were we going to say? We have Future Focused, and we have Jose, who's coming from the Farmington Municipal Schools, who are both what I consider to be experts in work-based learning and working with young people in internships. So what we're going to share today are best practices, tips and tricks, not required, but highly suggested. When we ask you guys all to participate with us and to host a young person as an intern, we don't want you to start from scratch. So you're welcome to put your own spin on anything that we share today. You're welcome to build it in to fit your community and the need of the young people that you're supporting. But we wanted to give you some things that we have already found great success in and things that really work. So that's kind of the intro of what we're doing here today. We'll go to the next slide. We do have a very large crowd today. So if you do not have your camera on, I probably won't be able to scroll all the way over and see you anyways. However, we do encourage you to have your camera on. What we like to do is it helps us just identify if the information we're providing is interesting. If you're falling asleep, maybe we'll tell a joke. It just really helps us understand where we're at in the presentation. If you are able to, update your name label on what's showing on the screen with your first name and maybe the location that you're coming from, the county that you're coming from, just so we know what area, if you're throwing questions at us, it's easier for us to answer. Also, do use the chat box. We have several of us on the call today for us to answer questions. We can try and answer them directly, or if there's a lot of the same questions, we'll bring it up in a discussion. And again, keep yourself on mute. Just if you're starting to order lunch and I hear it, I'm going to be extremely jealous and it just all goes down here from there. So keep yourself on mute. Unless you have a question, feel free to unmute and let us know. What I will do also next is we're going to participate in an icebreaker. As mentors, some of you might have the ability to meet with your young people via Zoom. You might be doing things in person. Everybody's community is going to do it whichever way works best for themselves. This icebreaker that I'd like to do with you, I learned from an intern, so I like to throw that out there, and it's called Cameras On. So if you have a camera, if you can turn it on now for a short period of time, you don't have to keep it on forever. If you do not have a camera, feel free to participate in the chat. And the object of this game, I'm going to ask a question and you keep your camera on if it applies to you. So the first question, keep your camera on if you are still working from home. Oh, a lot of people return to the office. All right. A lot of pictures disappeared. Okay, next question. Keep your camera on if you have hosted an intern before. Looks like we're going to have a lot of first timers, which is excellent. I hope that you get a lot out of this training, a lot of resources, tools, things that you can use with your young people. Now, keep your camera on if you remember your first boss, the first boss you ever had. This is kind of a two-parter. So if you remember your boss, keep your camera on. Now, keep it on longer if that memory of your first boss is a good one. I saw some disappear. Okay. So just keep that in mind too. We are going to be somebody's first boss potentially. So we want to just keep that in mind. They might be a little nervous. We'll talk about that later. Keep your camera on if you have ever been late to work. This is going to be a two-parter as well. Now, keep it on longer if no matter what it was, if for some reason you felt like you needed a ridiculous, elaborate, over-explaining story on why you were late. I could tell you when I first entered the workforce, a flat tire turned into like a life story because I was just very nervous that I was going to get in trouble when really, you know, I hit snooze too many times or whatever it was. So just keep those in mind too. We might have people who've never had to call in late and they might be a little bit nervous and all of a sudden just I woke up late turned into you're hearing their whole life story. And last question, keep your camera on if you are excited to host an intern this summer. I see the cameras turning on. That's exciting. Awesome. So thank you so much for participating in our icebreaker. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mike. And I know nobody cares, but I'm so sorry that I did not comb my hair today. If I don't apologize.
You are but a digital dot in the midst of these 130 individuals, and we are very thankful to have you here, Rebecca. We want to give a shout out to Felipe Scobel as well, who did admit that he arrives at work late every day. So Felipe, we're hoping that your intern will keep the fort together as you arrive. There'll be some good training opportunities there. So folks, again, we are so excited to have you here. If you are.
Oh my, sorry.
Thanks. Did you just, am I good, Christian?
You're good to go now.
Okay, I feel like I got masterfully muted there. So we are excited to have you. If you are a mentor, we just want to give an extra round of thanks to you because you are the people that really make this happen. While it's absolutely imperative to have coordinators and county and tribal officials to put this whole program together, you are the people that are hosting the young and so your participation in this is greatly appreciated, and we're very excited to have you here today. I'm just going to jump in. Goals for the day. Our hope is to provide you an overview and a structure of what the summer internship program will look like. Again, as Rebecca already mentioned, this is going to be unique to each of your own communities. However, your tribe, your pueblo, your county is approaching this, and even your own employer site where you work, there's going to be nuanced differences in each area. So just keep that in mind, that what we're going to share today is by no means a prescriptive, must do everything in this way. Second of all, we do hope to explore some resources with you to help you plan your internship experience. Some of you may already be underway, so perhaps these are some resources that could help you dial things in a little differently. But for those of you that haven't started, we're hopeful that these will help you get things prepped so you feel comfortable with the start. And then finally, we want to explore some resources and techniques for checking in with interns, giving feedback to them, also connecting with their intern coordinator. So we're going to step into that realm as part of today's. It would make sense to start with just this notion of mentorship. And for some of you, this may be familiar. Mentor as a term derives from Greek mythology, and an individual named Mentor was actually friends with Odysseus. And when Odysseus left to participate and fight in the Trojan War, he placed this individual mentor in charge of his own son. And hence this term has evolved to mean a trusted counselor, a teacher, an advisor, and in our context, typically someone in a professional setting who's more experienced in their career, and they are then sharing that expertise and guiding a younger person, helping them build their networks, gather experience. So you can see from the bullets on the bottom that a mentor is friendly, but it's not about being somebody's friend per se. There's a lot of thought that goes into maintaining clear personal and professional boundaries, keeping high expectations, supporting a young person to meet those expectations, encouraging them. So we just think that's a neat point, starting point as we jump into today's session. When you think about what you will be doing, we have listed some general bullet points that are likely going to be expected of you in your individual programs. So this is pre-session, before the 6 weeks or whatever your term is starts. We're anticipating that as a mentor, you may well be supporting the creation of a position description. Now that will be different depending on how your county or your locale is approaching this. And we're going to share some examples, and we'll share some resources in case this is something that you are actually actively doing. We're also anticipating you'll create a general plan for the experience. What days will the young person be on site? What will the hours be? Are there some key meeting spaces that they need to be in? So we'll talk more about that. Jose has prepared some very clear talking points and hopefully some thought-provoking ideas for structuring this experience. And then we are anticipating that you will be involved in some process of onboarding that young person. You may be working collaboratively with other partners to do that. Maybe it's just for you on site. One way or the other, we imagine you'll play a role in that. And then finally, we're thinking that you will be in some way involved with the time documentation and the feedback process for this intern. And again, Jose will be walking you through some very helpful tools that your area may be using to help make that happen. Once the session starts, we're anticipating that you're going to integrate and welcome this young person into your place of work. We imagine you will be conducting at least weekly one-to-one check-ins with that individual. We are hopeful that you will be responding to requests from a coordinator or perhaps from whoever is sponsoring the program, and that you'll be managing and supporting the intern in managing timesheet submissions as well as the feedback process. So there will be some tools that we'll share about how that might take place. So again, these are the pre-start expectations. Now during the session, most sessions are averaging about 6 weeks. And that's the basic overview of what we're thinking you'll be involved in. At this point, we want to go ahead and shift into the nuts and bolts of the experience. Again,
Got muted, Mike.
Hey, Christian, just to check, am I doing that or is it muting me automatically?
No, I think we're just pressing buttons right now. So just if you keep
Okay.
going, it should be fine.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Rebecca. So again, we are asking young people to participate in this in a learning by doing experience, and we're going to ask you today to do the same. Even with 139 people on the call, we're going to use the chat box at times. We're going to have you participate to the best of our ability in the hopes that this will help you perhaps get some ideas for how you might want to engage with your young person, the intern at your site. Especially if you're still running in a hybrid setting, perhaps some virtual meetings are necessary. So hopefully this will serve for that purpose. Again, for us, the combination of professional mentorship in the form of a caring adult who's facilitating career exploration and real work, that's what we're after. And so I am going to hand this over to Jose to walk us through this next portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Rebecca, for the icebreaker. I hope everyone's doing well today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jose Villarreal, and I am the Workforce Liaison for Farmington Municipal Schools. I oversee and am a developer of our work-based learning program, which is an employer-driven model, and we try to provide both, well, all mentors, students, and the coordinators with a quality experience. So I'm going to walk us through some structural pieces that will maybe provide you some ideas for examples on how to structure the internships if it's not already on the way. That said, let's just look at this slide here. And this is from an intern's perspective, their weekly schedule as an example. Again, doing the pre, which is going through summer internship orientations, which might look different at different locations. But again, envisioning the quality experience, some of you might be participating in presenting safety training for interns from the county perspective, but also mixing in some employability skills. We would definitely want to hand them off in as they start work with some skills, or at least the theory of what kind of soft skills they need to kind of learn throughout the experience. So employability skills is kind of the theme there, and that might look like it could happen during an orientation, or maybe it's a 2-day orientation, if you will. Or the during on this slide is another example of maybe Mondays they meet with the intern coordinator once a week. And every Monday they're in a 2 to 4 hour session going over employability skills and more, diving deeper into the theory of these employability skills. And I'll talk more on that here in a little bit. But the Tuesday through Friday would be at the work site, learning directly from the mentor how to do the job. Next slide, please. So from the mentor perspective, here's an example of what your weekly schedule might look like. There's a visual on the right-hand side. And again, hosting interns twice a week. In addition to, if you utilize the resources we're about to bring up, which Christian will probably share here in a minute, if not already, the actual resource website from PED. There is a mentor feedback for intern survey we're about to look at, and also just verifying and initialing timesheets, whatever that looks like for you. That's what one example of what one county is doing. So twice a week, they're hosting the full day of work, maximum of 20 hours a week is what they're getting paid through PED. And again, if it's 18 hours with you and 2 hours with the coordinator, that would be a great combination weekly. Next slide, please. So the roles are incredibly important for the mentor and also the intern coordinator to support the intern in the middle there. The graphic, I hope that that's visually pleasing. At least it grabs your attention one way or another. That said, it's supported by a communication tool, which we call the mentor feedback survey. And we're about to dive into that, but just looking at the graphic there in the middle, that tool was intentionally placed there with kind of a laptop connecting to the foot of the mentor, doing the actual survey and grading the intern on the week, every week. And actually the intern coordinator using that magnifying glass to look at that data a little better with the intern and giving them some practical tools or ideas on how to get better at the criteria, which we're about to look at on the next slide with this mentor feedback survey. So this is a snapshot of that feedback survey. So again, just looking at the first 3 that are listed, there are actually 8 criteria explaining this survey, which is in a Google Forms survey. We use Google Forms as a platform. You can use SurveyMonkey or another tool if you would like. But again, we're hoping that your intern coordinator went to these trainings, which was yesterday and the 2 weeks before on a Tuesday, and they were provided the same information with this tool. And hopefully they're utilizing it, because this is going to give you some quality data every single week. Work habits and attitudes, interpersonal effectiveness, technical skills, and so on. I'm actually going to drop it in the chat right now so everybody can actually get a really a handle on what this will look like from a mentor perspective if your intern coordinator is utilizing this tool. It would come potentially in an email, and it is in a digital format. Again, I'm dropping it now, so let's take the next minute to click on this and just do a test on what that will look like if your intern coordinator were to use this tool. So let's go ahead and click on that, pull it up. If you cannot pull it up, put it in the chat that it's not available, or maybe you can copy and paste into a different browser if it's not working for you. So let's look at this for a minute. As you're pulling it up, you can see all of the criteria there now, likely. And it's, again, work habits and attitude. Let me pull it up so I can kind of name them off with you. Communications, dependability, what else is there? Appearance and grooming. And also there is, before we go to the next slide, Mike, there is an additional comment section at the very bottom. That right there is a great accountability tool for interns when you communicate this back to the intern coordinator. And we're going to talk a little bit more how they dive deeper into this on a weekly check-in with the intern coordinators. But essentially grading the intern from below expectations to exceeding expectations 1 through 10, we as adult intern coordinators are asking mentors to be realistic in this when they grade them, so they can see the data progress, hopefully week to week, and you can finally at the end of the internship see the data as an uphill graph, if you will, looking at it as a progress, and it's a quality, and it's going to be a quality experience ultimately. But again, going back to the additional comments, likely you're going to probably see some good comments from a mentor if you're an intern coordinator and an intern receiving this feedback, like, hey, they're an asset to the team, or wow, they're really exceeding my expectations in this area. Also, on the other hand, you can utilize that additional comment as the accountability tool. For example, oh yeah, there was some downtime and the intern was on their phone, and we asked them in the beginning not to be on their phone. Can you address this with with them on Mondays, for example? Another one is we've experienced, hey, they never called into work. They just didn't show up 2 days this week. We had no idea where they were. That's another piece where you can put that in there. So it's an incredible tool that you can use, that is the communication back and forth on that intern, supporting them and giving them the best quality experience or best chance at success. Next slide, please. So that said, after you do that survey, after an intern coordinator, if they use this tool, submit it to you on Fridays, it takes 2 minutes to fill it out. You can see how easy it was to fill it out. You would fill it out for each intern respectively. And then on Mondays, for example, the interns meet with their coordinators and they look at this reflection piece. The instructions, I'm just gonna paraphrase that, but ultimately interns would grade themselves on the scores on how well they think they did in each of the criteria. Then they would receive the feedback from the mentors with the actual scores. They compare the two. It's a humbling experience sometimes, but it's also a confidence builder if they scored themselves really low and their mentor scored them really high on all of these employability or soft skills, or however you want to call them, in addition to technical skills on the job. Also, the second question says, how can you improve? This is a great learning lesson for them, or it can be a student-led discussion on how am I doing this and how am I doing better at this, communication, or what am I using, or what questions am I asking? It's a great tool to actually create camaraderie within the team of interns in that classroom setting, if you will. It can be utilized in Zoom. It can be utilized face-to-face. Next slide, please. Here's another resource, and all of these resources, again, are on the website if you wanted to go and check them out yourselves, but ultimately they're linked together, and this is within the student internship packet, which is a timesheet / skills grid. It is a tool that we use in our program, which ultimately has students fill this out by themselves, learning how to fill out hours on how they're working, and at the end of the day, getting a mentor's initial, and also doing a mini reflection on what skills they learned that day. It's a tremendous, again, learning point for them to find out what they're benefiting from, or how they're benefiting the employer at the job site. This is just an example. Again, one of the counties I'm working with real closely, they had to modify it and make sure it was compliant with auditing. So they did a couple of tweaks, but they still used that job skills line there to make sure that there was that quality experience for the interns and the coordinators and the mentors. In addition to, before we kind of transition into the next part of the presentation, there's more to the last survey that we just looked at. There's an employability skills PowerPoint that an intern coordinator has access to that takes them into a deeper dive on those criteria that you looked at in that forms. And that is a part of the resources that we're providing intern coordinators, again, kind of teaching them what it is to have good work ethic, what it is to have good communication skills, so on and so forth. There's activities that are connected as well for students. Again, we're providing these best practice tools to hopefully give you all and everyone involved a quality experience. So we hope you utilize them. We hope your intern coordinators are utilizing them. If not, please point them in those directions. And Mike is actually going to take us into more, I think, on the next slide. Mike, are we heading to the next slide?
Yep, we're going to transition. Jose, you all good with that?
Yeah. And we'll get to questions later if you have any questions on that tool. So thank you very much for that. I'll come up here in a little bit.
Perfect. Thanks, Jose. So folks, at this point, I hope you have kind of internalized the fact that there are other work efforts happening around you. You're providing that place-based learning experience for the student in your work setting, and those intern coordinators from your community are going to be meeting with these young people regularly. They'll be in a cohort. They'll be using some of the materials that Jose mentioned in his chat earlier. And so the idea that we're hoping to promote today is just so it's clear to you that there is a larger support and education effort going on that hopefully will complement the things that are happening in your particular work setting with your intern. With that said, we're going to jump into some activities that you may perhaps even experience if your locale, if your tribal government or the Pueblo county actually creates an intern orientation where you are present with the young person in a group setting, an initial kickoff. What we're going to do is start to engage with some activities that will perhaps be used. And if they don't show up in those spaces and something else is happening in your part of the world, they may be helpful activities just to consider doing or varying as the young person comes into your work site. So we thought we would start off with something that we're going to ask you to do. We're going to use the chat box with all 153 of us, which will be kind of fun, I think. And we'd like to actually have you do sort of an empathy activity and place yourself into, it's more of a visualization activity, in fact. And so we're going to ask you to think about your own experience. And first off, we want you to use the chat box and put in some negative associations that you have with work. This is something that typically we are very asset-based, but we find that at times, especially with young people, it's helpful to help them name some things that might be stereotypes, maybe negative perceptions. So put in your own perceptions about negative ideas you have of work. If you want to imagine what a teenager might say, feel free to throw that in too. And we're just going to take a look and see what this chat box starts to do as you guys blow this up. So Rebecca started us off with waking up early, boring, restricting, ambiguous expectations. Sometimes it's challenging, says Greg from Doña Ana, to take direction from other people. You might see unethical behaviors. That's great, from Richard. You could have a work experience that is stressful. Maybe it's, again, tedious. I love Allison from Tricor is naming, it's full of old people. That is something we see a lot. That when you ask young people, like, hey, what do you understand about work? They're like, oh, yeah, we're together with old people. And they may even cite that's why they would rather have a fast food job, because sometimes that is a little more varied. Christy's saying you have to deal with the Karens. Maybe you have an intimidating boss. It could be too hard. You can't be on social media. There's some excitement at first, but then maybe something changes with that. An authoritative boss with a lot of rules. Somebody says they could even do it better. Restrictions again, lack of direction, someone who couldn't dress how they wanted. So all of these activities, the things we're naming right now, and thanks, I'm going to wrap this up because I know you guys can fill this out for a while. These are things that we're encouraging our intern coordinators and the program sponsors to perhaps build in an activity early in the process of placement so that the young person can actually just have the freedom to name, here's some concerns I have, here's some stereotypes I might hold, and it allows those individuals to start digging into that. So perhaps you're a part of that. Maybe it's something that you'll want to explore with the young person even when they come to you. Teenagers are well known once they feel comfortable for sharing open and honest opinions. So in addition to preparing the young person, we're thinking for you in your setting, one of the things we recommend, and again, this varies from locale to locale, is to take the time to prepare a position description. The link that Christian put in the chat, which is to the website, has templates and examples from different areas of position descriptions. The idea with this is that we think there's real value to taking a few minutes to create something structured that blends professional exposure with real work. And so as we look at this example, this is simply, this is taken from the template. This happens to be in a healthcare setting, but the basic approach is the same regardless. There's a summary of the position of the organization where this position is located, and then it jumps into the essential functions and really starts to go into, in this case, what might be virtual functions if this is a hybrid setting. What are on-site functions? We're hoping that these placements this summer will be on-site, but again, that may not be the case always. The position description template also guides you through naming the hard and soft skills that might be involved in that work setting. So it gives you a chance as the mentor to say, yeah, these are the skills that I use on a day-to-day basis, and that this young person is going to be exposed to and even asked to then demonstrate or participate in a way that shows that they're learning these. And then there's even some notes about what types of onboarding requirements might happen. So we think that a position description lends an element of professionalism to the experience, and we encourage folks to design them in a way that is accessible to young people. We all know of job descriptions that you look through and they're fairly dry. These, you'll see in the templates, this actually includes language that says, hey, this position might be of interest to someone who is like this, or interested in this, or has these skills, or wants to develop these skills. So once you have a position description, we think it makes sense to take some time to develop a plan. In general, most of you are going to be offering 6-week experiences, and this chart is just a very straightforward approach to plan week by week some of the key components of that experience. So what will the intern be doing with you is one bucket that you probably want to address. What will the intern be doing on their own? And then what might the intern be doing with someone else? Again, these are very simplified general categories, but they should prompt some thinking that allows you to start anticipating how you want to structure the experience and play that out week by week. 6 weeks is a short period of time. Things will move quickly, and starting with the end in mind, we think is a great idea. Jose, do you want to speak more to this slide? And Jose is going to guide you through some additional thoughts to how you think about planning that as we get into this next step.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. And again, so maybe you've created a position description and then you've planned the onboarding training. For example, we talked about safety training in addition to employability skills. Then the next phase goes in immersing the intern into your organization or your department. And that looks different for some, but it could generally speaking be an observation of 1 to 2 to even 3 days of just observing and meeting different folks within their different positions within the company, but also observing the intern and asking questions. How do do you like to do this, or would this be interesting to you? For example, it might just, be a kind of a shadowing experience, if you will, in the beginning. And then once there's a mentor, it could be a different mentor than you were thinking of. How can we wake up Jose? I'm not sure what that question means, but I guess I'm looking a little tired or a little slow here. But anyways, just moving on with the hands-on portion of this, we really want you to set at high expectations for these interns because as JFK once said, a rising tide lifts all boats. We want there to be high expectations. We want, these kids are talented that are coming into the workforce, transitioning into the workforce. So that hands-on piece, it might look different for some, but depending on maturity level, you can assign them to tasks right away that are either entry level or even mid-level, depending on their maturity level. So that's kind of the 1, 2, 3, and then maybe they finish out the internship doing planning meetings, for example, for high level meetings within the organization. The do's and don'ts below here, the do's of empowering and encouraging students to get better every day. We definitely want you to do that. And the don't, giving grunt work like gopher or broom pusher, that is there to really set the tone of, we want this to be a quality experience, and giving them the almost bigger picture spectrum of, hey, you could potentially earn your way up the ladder here and potentially turn this into a real career. So that's the idea there. We get that there's going to be some weed pulling, for example, or even just some trash picking up here and there in different areas, maybe some broom pushing. But the idea, again, is for a quality experience, the work-based learning. That's why the structure is there for the intern coordinator to support on the front end. And on the back end, you have that communication as well with that tool if you utilize that tool that we talked about earlier. And I think I'm done with this slide. Thank you, Mike.
Great. Thanks, Jose. So we just think that pre-thought, right, taking a little bit of time to think through how you're going to assess that young person, what settings are you going to put them in right away, that'll pay dividends for you as you integrate them into your workspace. And that position description, again, is exactly, we have conceived of it exactly as Jose described. It's blending work tasks that you need help with or that you think would be a good fit with exposure. And the goal is to hit a happy medium so that the young person is not just following around with a more show and tell type experience, nor are they tasked with repetitive menial type tasks over the course of the 6 weeks. So we have great trust in you and your teams to figure out how to balance that. We also want to emphasize just the need for clear, consistent, and really proactive communication. It's so foundational, especially knowing how short the internship experience is. So we encourage you to be upfront with your intern immediately when you first meet them, whether it's through an orientation or maybe the first day on the job, to frame for them how they can communicate with you best. How can they get a hold of you if there is a need? Even if they need to clarify something during the day, is it a text message to somebody? Maybe cell phones are not allowed in certain spaces. Do you prefer email? Things like that. And just encouraging that young person to be proactive in their engagement of you and other people in their spaces. Similarly, you should have the contact information for the intern coordinator who's supporting that individual. So we think that is the basis for then thinking more deliberately around how are you checking in with that young person on a weekly basis. We're going to talk just briefly about the one-to-one check-in. And we want to emphasize that this could happen in multiple settings over the course of the week, but at least make the time to have one time a week, some dedicated space with that young person to work through what their experience is like, to let them share, to give them feedback. That is just so important for reinforcing their own growth and skill building. And I think it really helps you gauge their own development. Short framework, if you have not done this before, this framework just simply walks you through what you could do in a 15 or 20-minute meeting, how you might approach that with the intern. So first, we suggest you find a space where you can focus on the young person and they can do this without being distracted as much as the setting allows. And then start off with some sort of big picture conversation. Try to put them at ease, ask them how things are going. You can ask them about their school. Maybe you know something about where they go to school or what they do. Maybe you learn something through the orientation. So you can customize these questions. And then you can start digging into their own experiences. So the second portion is really asking them to say some of the specific things they've been doing in your setting. What were they comfortable with? What was challenging? What did they find interesting? Maybe where were they having to access other supports in your setting? And then the last portion of the meeting, after you have that out on the table, you can step into a feedback, kind of a reflection space, asking them even to sort of self-assess. And depending on what your tribe or your pueblo is then, or the county is facilitating, you may have a feedback form like Jose shared with you that you take time to fill out right then. Perhaps there's some reflection from the previous week. And this is a chance for you then to cite some specific things and say, oh, I saw you making great effort here. Next week, I'd really like you to see you try this. Or I know you struggled in this space and that was a challenge, but let's try to reframe it and put in a little more support, and we're going to try this next week. So that open and honest, supportive feedback, we think, is really a critical part to the experience. As a tool for you, again, this slide presentation will be available afterwards, so you can access this and look at this if it's helpful. This is simply vocabulary. And for those of us, right, who have had interns, or if not, if you've just worked with individuals professionally, especially younger folks on the job, and you're trying to mentor them, sometimes it's tricky to find the right word to describe how someone is evolving. And so these are just vocabulary words that you may find helpful to describe the particular behaviors and work you see from your intern. So being able to name like, oh, you're persevering here, or I see self-direction from you. I see you being tenacious and not giving up, or somebody who is being making that extra effort in the communication realm. You can say, thank you for being an attentive listener, for being someone who is on point and is presenting something coherently. That type of feedback for a young person with vocabulary from the professional work setting is just super helpful. You're modeling for them the environment around you. With that last list, I hit on a couple of actual recognition statements that one could use. We really advocate, we advocate for being open with young people and sharing the feedback and recognition of their efforts. So very much positive youth development, assets-based approaches in framing what they're doing well and seeing that and calling it out. So just saying, hey, you showed up looking so professional on this first day. I saw you making an effort to ask questions, following up a particular meeting. That is really affirming for the young person. And you can even go beyond that and kind of identify, if you see the young person where they're faced with like, oh, they're struggling in this space, and you see it, you can even name things that are not happening, but could have had the intern made a different choice. And this is kind of an interesting way of providing recognition. And it offers the opportunity to say, hey, I saw this morning you were struggling, right? You were in a meeting, a lot of technical terms. I saw you trying to stay attentive, and you could have checked out. You could have started playing on your phone. And you're naming those potential negative outcomes that the young person was able to persist through, and that validates even more their efforts. So this is just simply another way of expressing recognition for the young person while also naming some of those pitfalls. This is all building up to, right, whatever you're doing with your county or your local organizing entity. When that young person is on site, there's going to be a first day. There's going to be a first day for you. We thought we would take a second, similar to how we asked you to engage around your perceptions of the work, using the chat, where you're imagining your first day at the internship site as a mentor. The interns may well do this activity with their coordinator, where they're thinking through their lens as an intern. But for right now, please use the chat, and we're going to ask you to answer kind of the first 2 questions from this. This is called an empathy map. What on that first day are you as a mentor going to be thinking and feeling? And maybe even what will you be saying and doing? So anticipate the arrival of that intern. What will you be thinking and feeling? What might you be saying and doing? And so I'm going to stop the share for just a second so I can see the chat a little more easily. And we'll see what folks have to say about this. Greg, thanks so much for just right away saying, how can I make this experience beneficial to all concerned, right? That's likely going to go through your head, trying to put the intern at ease, trying not to overwhelm them, identifying strengths, engaging the intern through the strengths, making them feel comfortable. You're going to want to Cindy saying, I want to make them feel comfortable and make this feel inviting to them. Welcomed by all. That's so great. Don't forget, on that first day, you're going to want to introduce that young person to your team. Some people may not know that there's an intern in your space. You want to lead them into a discussion. You want to gauge them, give them a tour. That's great. What might you do that first day? You could tour them around, expose them to the facility, to the other people within it. Some folks are writing in that they're going to be feeling nervous but excited, clarifying those final details around a schedule to clarify what works for them best, make sure that everything is tight with their weekly schedule. And I think that the whole notion of how do you make them feel comfortable to discuss their concerns without being hesitant, that's exactly right. You're building those foundational first steps to ensure that that can happen. Yvonne's saying she's going to be smiling. That's awesome. Cece's saying she wants to keep them busy, but ease them into the work. Mary Ward from Doña Ana is saying, I'm gonna be sure to explain our policies and how we enforce safety first. So what does that look like? These are great things, and engaging in this, simply anticipating what that first day might be like will put you in a position to better then act and frame the steps on site when they arrive. Similarly, it's our hope that the interns will experience this in some way or shape with their own orientation done by their intern coordinators. So we also thought it would make sense just to be very explicit with you about some things that are even beyond some of the things that came in the chat just a minute ago to name. Don't forget to hit these things. It's okay to perhaps even go over some things that might have been covered in orientation. Remember to remind them whatever COVID safe practices your work setting is using, reinforce that with them. Make sure they understand. Things are certainly changing and evolving for the better, but be upfront with what they need to do. Take some time to name what appearance in your setting looks like. What is appropriate dress for your workspace? What is the difference in terms of private versus public? That can impact phone use, technology, taking pictures, the whole notion of confidentiality for young people, especially if this is their first work experience. That's worth talking with them explicitly about and reminding them, and to say, hey, this is a space where work things stay here. Feel free to share in general terms, but specifics and routing that out into the community and with others and through social media or other spaces may simply not be appropriate. Again, you'll want to cover with them what the process is for the time card review, how they're going to help keep track. You'll need them, right, to help you understand, and this is a give and take. What's their schedule? What's that time card? How's that the time being processed? What do you need to do? What is your contact information for the intern? And again, the last piece we think really makes sense. Make a plan with that intern on that first day or even during orientation, what to do in case you're out of that space. If you're out of the office, maybe there's a backup, a mentor buddy, maybe there's a team of people that they turn to, just some way to have that additional support present for them. We think taking the time to be really helpful. And remember, you all are going to see the experience from the closest vantage point. You are there in the work setting with the young person. And so we want you to really feel empowered to be the eyes, the ears, and the quick activator of networks and support if anything seems amiss. So even if you just have questions, reach out to that intern coordinator, reach out to your county, your tribal or Pueblo partners to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. What might I do next, or what should I keep in mind? That is just imperative because, as Jose said earlier, 6 weeks moves fast, and the structure that he described, as well as these communication techniques, will help keep those 6 weeks on track and productive. And being very deliberate in reaching out quickly can go a long way towards facilitating a successful experience. At this point, we've covered the bulk of the information that we were hoping to address with you. What we'd like to do is now, I'd like to ask you to today. We really appreciate you being here today. The vision for this, the hope is that what we're doing this summer will allow itself to be replicated next summer. So your feedback is not only helpful for what we're doing now and what we're stepping off to in this space, but hopefully it'll help our teams think through how to customize this even further and adjust for future efforts. So the link is in the chat.
To interrupt. but
Sure.
we lost you, and so we see that there's a link, and we missed part of what you were saying leading into that.
Excellent. Thank you for naming that. So the survey is the link that is in the chat is for a survey. We could use your feedback to improve and adjust not only for this summer, but anticipating that this may well occur next summer. So we'd like to have you take 5 minutes to fill that out. And then we're going to come back and move into a question and answer session. So I hope I'm seeing heads nod that the chat does contain the link. You should be able to open that, and I'll set a timer for 5 minutes. As you start to finish up the survey, you are welcome to start putting questions that you might have in the chat. I will add in, or just as a heads up, many of you, you're representing areas all over the state. As we mentioned in the at the start of the presentation, each of your areas is going to approach certain things in their own unique way. And so Jose, Rebecca, and I will do our best to answer questions, but we may well be referring you back to the folks who are organizing the experience in your community for you to get that specific information about how your program is being designed and implemented in your area. So that said, feel free to start popping things into the chat box, and then we'll address them in just a second. We'll give people another minute or so with the survey. Okay, so we're, Jose, I have one question that was routed to me directly, and I'll pick that up. And then if you want to hit the second one about the feedback form, that'd be great. So I have a question that just says, who's responsible for the 6-week cohort classroom sessions? And that is the intern coordinator. So not you as the mentor, but whoever in your area is serving as an intern coordinator. Typically, the way this is structured, it depends. It varies from community to community, but the model is that an intern coordinator would support up to 20 interns. And so you can imagine that coordinator has that cohort. The plan, as Jose described in the schedule, is to meet with them maybe just once a week. Maybe it'll be designed a little differently, but they're supporting with curriculum. They're checking in on the intern. They're supporting you. They'll be checking in with you, and they are the ones planning that 6-week curriculum. And hopefully you'll hear about that in your area. So Jose, I'm going to hand it over to you for the next question.
Thanks, Mike. So Christina asked a 4-part question on the Google Forms. I'll try and sum it up in answering that. So that was just a test on the Google Forms platform. You can definitely customize one if you have never used Google Forms. If you simply have a Gmail, there's what they call a waffle on the top right-hand side. It's the 9 little dots on the top right-hand side of the screen on your home screen. If you're on Chrome, for example, just hit that waffle, and then you just go to Google Forms there. It's a little purple icon right there. And it's very simple to use, very simple to create a Google form. So yeah, you could copy and paste from the example that's on the website that Christian posted. In that example, you really can't get in and edit that example that we actually looked at today either. So you would just kind of edit it based on what the example is and what best fits your criteria that you want to use. And upon completion of each week, that should go directed to the adult coordinator. So the adult coordinator, again, if you utilize the tool, getting that measurement data, that quantitative data, and sending it to the intern coordinator, they would then reflect with the intern on that other piece, which is in the internship packet, again, on the website. Those tools, all of the resources are on the website of PEDs. And that reflection piece is just either on a hard copy within the internship packet, or it can be done digitally, and that's just receiving your feedback and going over it and reflecting on it. Does that make sense? I hope that answered the question.
Jose, there's one follow-up question that's just asking, will the intern coordinator provide the feedback forms for the mentors and the intern?
Yes, so that is their responsibility. And we've described that in the adult coordinator trainings, that they are to create these forms and then send them out digitally in an email, either with a link or just send them directly from Google Forms to the mentors. And hopefully it's at the end of the work week. That could be on Friday morning, for example. You'd be receiving it from the adult coordinator. They fill it out, and as soon as you hit click submit, it goes directly back to them. The responses go to the intern coordinator, and then they have that data. They can print it off. They can have it in PDF form after that, and basically hand it out to the interns the day that they meet with them.
One thing I will add, though, is every community might do this a little bit differently. So we shared this resource because it's cool and easy. However, your coordinator may decide to do it differently. They may have you. So I would say meet your coordinator and see if they're going to do it. Yes, they're going to create it and distribute it to you, but they might have something else in mind. So the Google form wasn't required. It's just a tool we found helpful and we shared, and we highly suggest.
We highly suggest. Thank you, Rebecca. I was going to say it's highly recommended.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely, again, if you're a data person, you know, which a lot of us are, you can see the quantitative data come across here at the end of the program as a progress and a successful internship with that tool.
Great. So I'm going to jump back up to higher in the chat. Cece, or I don't know if this is Ceci, whether the interns are allowed to go out into the field, if that is part of the job. We would ask you to speak with your particular partner and organizer in your community to determine just the specifics of whatever you might want to have happen through that position description and experience. There are definitely some do's and don'ts. We did not go through those specifics, but when it comes to stepping out of, stepping into settings where there may be greater exposure and other types of activities happening, we just really encourage you to talk to your partners in your community to nail down those guidelines.
And just to follow up on that, Mike, real quick,
yep.
Rebecca, is there FLSA on the website? Hazardous.
I just yeah.
You
so
just put the link in. Oh, okay.
Those are the only things. Like if you're asking your young people, there are child labor laws. So there's just a few. If they're under a specific age, they're not allowed to do a few types of things. But it would be up to your county if they're going to let them travel. That's not against the law as far as federal child labor laws. But I put a link in there just to make sure if you're going to have them, they're not allowed to operate any heavy machinery. And there's just a list of the occupations they're not allowed to do at a specific age. Other than that, it's going to be up to your county if they're going to be covered, like riding in a vehicle with you or anything like that. Great.
Thanks, Rebecca and Jose. There's a series of questions right now that are all related to the intern coordinator. And I'm going to, Rebecca, Jose, I'm going to take a stab at it. You complement what we need to. So the hope is, folks, that you will be contacted by the coordinator. They should be understanding where the placements are, and they will be reaching out to you. Or it may be that your county or tribal intermediary is making that connection. So that should start to happen. If you're already at that point where you think things should be starting and you haven't heard from people, please reach out to the directors or the folks who are implementing the program in your area. And then you can get that information. There are other comments about kind of the number of interns and coordinating it, questions about could a county approach it in a certain way. And again, these are questions that we just can't answer, that we would refer you back to the folks who are helping organize the program for you. It sounds like Nora has a question specific to Doña Ana. Kind of how many mentors are with different interns, and that may be something to take up with the folks who are working in your community. Rebecca, Jose, is there anything to add? You see these questions as well.
Mhm. The one thing that I would just add, I don't want to add like fuel to the fire, but when designed, we did have in mind, just so you know where we were coming from, would be one coordinator to about 20 interns. Did not want a coordinator to exceed 20 interns for good communication, but knowing that the intern could possibly have more than one mentor. So if the young person is working within your organization and they're going to see not one department, but maybe a variety of departments or try several different roles, they may have more mentors than coordinators. But from my understanding, we were assigning one coordinator up to 20 interns, potentially having more mentors. Does that make sense? Did I outline that correctly?
Yep, I think that's correct, Rebecca.
Yep.
That's right on the money.
So the coordinator could have communication with up to 20 students and even more mentors, depending on how many mentors are mentoring that one intern. So one intern has 5 mentors and the other intern only has 1 mentor, you could see how the numbers could grow there.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Ryan from Las Cruces asks, I have several coordinators for my 4 interns. Can they agree on doing it the same way, or is there only one process? Again, this is definitely moldable. Definitely our advice, I guess, to that would be to communicate directly with each one of those coordinators and see if they've attended, for example, our trainings, to just get everybody on the same page. There is not only one process. You can definitely do this different ways. We're just trying to suggest some best practices in these trainings.
If you're one of those sites that has multiple mentors working with the intern, right, or people that they're going to be exposed to, we would just encourage you to try to be deliberate in your communication with those mentors to make sure that the young person doesn't kind of get lost in the shuffle, and that those mentors who might be working with the young person are communicating so that there's a sense of an overview of how the experience is going. So typically what we recommend is that there's one person who really is in charge as a mentor, making sure that the overall experience is flowing well, and that as the person then steps into other settings and may be with other adults, that there still is somebody who's making sure that the big picture is on track and ensuring that those handoffs, if they should occur, happen in a kind of a fashion that makes sense for those people. Because it's easy sometimes for the young person to start to feel like, oh, who's really paying attention to me? And it could be confusing for them.
So to look at, have we touched on Nora's question, Mike?
I think go ahead and hit that, Jose. It's a broad one, but it's a good one to touch base on.
Just the moving company. I am confused as to who is overseeing the summer internship in Doña Ana.
Oh, yeah.
That one. So we can definitely give you information, I believe, here, Mike. Can we not, as far as who to contact at the county?
Christian, do you have the updated contacts again? We could drop that in the chat.
They're listed on the website as well.
Yes. Nora, I'll go ahead and get with you. If you could just drop your email into the chat. And that way I can make sure I get the right contact information for you.
Yeah, and I would just suggest we do have point of contact listed on our PED website that's created. So I know that with a bunch of mentors, you may have been contacted from a variety of people. So we have primary direct contacts that if you feel like maybe you're being left out of a loop or just want to circle back, I don't think it would be bad to call those point of contacts that we have as well.
Yep, great. And there's some stuff going in the chat already.
There was also a question if there's a set date that they should start. There's not a set date. Each county is operating on their own schedules, which I know sounds a little silly, but we wanted to make sure it was working well for each individual community. Some schools were in school longer, out of school sooner, etc. So your county may be starting a little bit later than others. I think you guys heard on the call some, or I think you saw in the questions, some have already started, some did not. So everyone's a little bit different.
Great. Any other questions that we can be helpful with? Well, folks, we just want to say, again, a sincere thanks for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. We're very appreciative of you opening up your workspace and giving of your time and energy to help make this opportunity available to a young person. We're just super excited for them. If you're already underway, there was a comment earlier that just kind of named like, oh, if only we could have had this a little bit sooner. These are things that we will certainly take into account in looking at the future. But for now, we hope this is helpful, and we just wish you the very best as you start off on this experience with your interns this summer. It's a great service to your community and to the state of New Mexico as we try to engage young people in professional settings after a pretty tough time for all of our communities. So thanks again. You have our access and contact information on the website that Christian had put in the chat. If there's anything else that you need going forward, reach out to your local coordinators and organizers, and feel free to contact us if that's helpful. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lydia, are you still on the call? You just direct messaged me.
I am on the call. I was hoping I could get that contact information as well, if you could email it to me.
Sure. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste and send that over to Christian, the email address, and he'll email you the Doña Ana County contact information.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lydia. Thank you so much.
Send it over to me too, Christian, because I got a few DMs for that one.
Okay.
DMs.
I'm so trendy. I live with teenagers.
Christian, are you facilitating the closure here now?